He called me a sweet old mascot in front of his friends. They laughed. I smiled. But what none of them knew was that the house he grew up in, the business he ran, even the holidays he hosted, were all paid for by me. And that night, I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just went home and rewrote my will. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said I had everything I needed. A quiet home, a little garden, and the joy of knowing my son was finally standing on his own 2 feet. After all, I'd spent nearly 4 decades making sure he'd get there. His name's Michael, 39 years old, charming, ambitious, and just last spring, he opened his own cafe, Roast and Rise. It was small but trendy, with reclaimed wood tables, local art, oat milk, everything. He was so proud. And I was proud too. Quietly, like always. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd sold the last car my husband ever drove and used the money to open a private investment account in my name. $90,000 over 5 years, saved penny by penny. Every Christmas bonus, every overtime check, every tax return, not for me, for him. So when the opportunity came, I could say, "Here, son, build something." But I never told him, because Michael hated being helped. He wanted to believe he did it all on his own, and maybe I wanted that for him too. This Christmas, he insisted on hosting the family dinner at his cafe, said it would be fresh, modern, a new tradition. I offered my house, like always, but he waved me off. "No need to stress, Mom. We've got this." So I baked my famous cranberry orange bread, wrapped it in the same towel his little hands had helped me embroider when he was 7. I picked out a green scarf for his girlfriend, the one she complimented last winter, and I brought the white linen napkins, the ones I always save for Christmas Eve. I wasn't trying to outshine anyone. I just wanted it to feel like home. When I walked into the cafe that evening, it was already buzzing, music low, lights warm. The tree in the corner sparkled. Michael looked sharp in his tailored blazer. He hugged me briefly, then turned to greet someone else. I smiled, because that's what mothers do. We show up. We soften the edges. We make things whole, even when we feel like background noise. That night, I told myself, it's okay. He's busy. He'll thank me later, but some thank yous never come, and some kindnesses are mistaken for weakness. You ever walk into a room and feel like furniture? That's what it felt like when I stepped into Michael's cafe that Christmas Eve. I was holding the cranberry bread still warm from the oven, wrapped in the same cloth I'd stitched with his name when he was 7. He used to be so proud of that embroidery. Now I'm not sure he even noticed. The place looked lovely, I'll give him that. Edison bulbs, minimalist pine garlands, indie Christmas music playing at just the right volume. It felt festive. Trendy. Not like home, but nice. Michael walked over, gave me a quick one-arm hug, then immediately turned to greet a group of his friends from college. "Mom's here," he said over his shoulder like a footnote. I stood there for a second, then found the empty spot on the table and started laying out the bread. His girlfriend, Madison, smiled politely and asked, "So, Mrs. P, what did you do before retirement?" Before I could finish saying, I was a senior accountant at the city hospital. Michael laughed lightly and cut in, "She just likes numbers and cookies, basically our family mascot." Mascot. That word hung in the air longer than it should have. Some people laughed. I forced a smile. I've had years of practice. I folded the napkins the way I always did, tight triangles with the holly sprigs tucked just right, but no one noticed. I asked Michael where he wanted the gift bags I brought. He waved toward a corner without looking up. Part of me wanted to say something to remind him this cafe, this success, had my fingerprints all over it. But I didn't. Because mothers, we don't interrupt. We don't compete. We wait for space to open. It didn't. During appetizers, I tried to make conversation. Mentioned how his dad used to burn the turkey every other year, how Michael once poured maple syrup in the stuffing by accident. Madison smiled at her phone. Michael reached for another drink. No one laughed. Quick question for those of you watching. Have you ever felt completely invisible in a room full of your own family? Not angry, not bitter, just like no one saw you anymore? Let me know in the comments. I'm reading all of them. I really am. Back at the cafe, dessert was being served, and I was starting to feel like a leftover. They snapped group photos. Michael, Madison, the staff. And I wasn't in any of them. I stood by the window for a while, sipping lukewarm cider, watching the cars go by. Outside, it had started to snow. Inside, I realized something. I wasn't the hostess. I wasn't the backbone. I wasn't even the guest of honor. I was just passing through, and I wasn't sure when that had started. I should have gone home after dinner. I should have taken the quiet exit, said I was tired, and slipped away before dessert. But part of me, some tired, stubborn piece, still wanted to believe I mattered, that I was more than just a background prop in Michael's shiny new life. So I stayed. The pies came out, store-bought but nicely plated. Madison made a joke about how her generation door dashes everything except emotions. The table laughed. I tried to offer to take a photo of the group by the little tree near the window. Michael shook his head. "Maybe not this time, Mom. It's a young vibe, you know." He said it lightly, almost with a smile, but it hit me like a slap. Madison laughed and added, "It's okay, Helen. You're basically our vintage charm." I laughed too, the kind of laugh that keeps your tears from showing up too soon. They moved on. Another round of wine. Someone turned up the music. I sat quietly, folding my napkin in half, then in half again, tucking it under my plate. And then came the moment. The one I know I'll remember when I'm 90. The moment that split something in me clean down the middle. A friend of Michael's, some guy with expensive glasses and a louder voice than sense, asked him, "Hey man, who helped you with this place? You got investors, or are you just that good?" Michael grinned, leaned back in his chair and said, "Nah, just me. No handouts, no training wheels. All hustle." My breath caught. Madison looked over at me, smirking, and said, "Come on, babe. At least give your mom credit for emotional support. Or the cookies." Laughter. Big, echoing, table-slapping laughter. And there I was, the joke in the punchline of my own sacrifice. I didn't say a word. I didn't flinch. I stood up, walked to the corner, picked up the bread I brought untouched, and walked toward the door. Michael looked up briefly. "Where are you going?" I smiled. "I forgot something at home," I said softly. No one followed me. No one asked if I was okay. It was snowing harder now. My boots sank a little with each step, like the ground itself was asking me to stop. But I kept walking. In my purse was a small blue folder, the one with the original will, the one that still named Michael as sole beneficiary of my house, my savings, everything I had built. That night, for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I had to do. And I wasn't angry. I was done begging to be seen. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, just the glow of the street lamp through the window. The folder sat in front of me, blue, frayed at the corners, and heavier than it looked. Inside was the original will I'd written 5 years ago, still naming Michael as the sole beneficiary of everything. The house, the savings, the investments, even the old wedding ring I kept tucked in the back of my dresser drawer. I'd written that will when I still believed that love and loyalty were the same thing. But now I wasn't so sure. Around 7:30 the next morning, I bundled up and drove to the office of my old attorney, Mr. Daly. He's known me since before Michael was born. Always kept peppermints in a jar on his desk, and never once made me feel like I was wasting his time. When he asked how I'd been, I didn't tell him the whole story. I just said, "I need to make some changes." He nodded like he understood more than I was saying. I sat there, hands folded, while he reviewed the original documents. Then I slid him a note I'd written in longhand the night before. It read, "Remove Michael Pearson as beneficiary. New beneficiary. The Women's Education Reclamation Fund, specifically for scholarships to women over 50 returning to college." He read it, then looked up at me carefully. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Completely." He asked if I wanted to notify Michael. I said no. If he ever notices the silence, he's welcome to ask why. I walked out of that office with my new will in a sealed envelope and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. Not anger, not revenge, just ownership. This house? Mine. These savings? Mine. My story. Mine again. I used to believe that the greatest gift I could give was to step aside, to make space. But stepping aside only works when someone values the space you held, and Michael didn't. Not anymore. And maybe some of you watching know exactly what I mean. Have you ever made yourself smaller, more convenient, just to keep the peace? Because I've done that for years. And this was the moment I stopped. I went home, poured a cup of tea, and placed the new will in my top drawer, right beside my wedding ring and the thank you note Walter wrote me on our 40th anniversary. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt intact. And that, for the first time in a long time, felt like enough. After I changed the will, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There was no moment of fireworks or music swelling. It was quieter than that, like taking off shoes that never quite fit. The next morning, I brewed a stronger cup of coffee than usual and stood at the kitchen window, watching the snow melt in little rivulets down the gutters. My house looked the same, but I didn't feel the same in it. I felt grounded, like I'd finally stopped floating around trying to earn my place in rooms I had built with my own hands. For years, I'd been giving so much of myself without ever asking what I was getting in return. That sounds selfish, doesn't it? But it's not. It's human. It's honest. I wasn't looking for applause. I just didn't want to disappear. So I started showing up for someone I had neglected for a long time. Me. That Friday, I went to the public library and signed up for a volunteer shift. Just 2 hours a week in the reading room, helping older women fill out online forms for community college or type up resumes after decades out of the workforce. One of them laughed when I offered to help and said, "I'm too old to start over." I smiled and told her, "That's exactly what they hope you'll believe." And I meant it. I donated a portion of my savings to a local fund that covered textbooks and enrollment fees for women over 50. Nothing flashy, just enough to matter. And it did. I got a handwritten card a week later from a woman named Clarice, who was going back to school for nursing. She wrote, "Your kindness found me when I thought I was invisible." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Michael never called, never asked why I left that night, never followed up. But I didn't chase his silence anymore. I didn't interpret it. I didn't bend myself into a softer version just to earn his voice. Some of you understand this, don't you? That moment when you finally stop performing for people who never clap. It doesn't mean you stop loving them. It just means you start loving yourself more. I started cooking for myself again, not out of habit, but joy. I wrote in a journal I hadn't touched in 10 years, and every time I folded a napkin, lit a candle, or brewed tea just for me, it felt like I was reclaiming inches of space I'd slowly given away. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't seen. And somehow, that felt like freedom. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Michael finally reached out. A text. Short, blunt. "Mom, haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" I stared at it for a while, not out of anger, but because I realized I didn't owe him an answer, born from obligation. For once, I got to decide what deserved a reply. I didn't write back right away. I went for my walk instead, past the park, down the quiet street with the white picket fences, the one where I used to push his stroller on Saturday mornings. I thought about how many seasons had come and gone, how I'd measured life by his milestones, first steps, first job, first cafe, and now I was learning to measure by my own again. First journal entry in years, first volunteer session, first night I set the table for one, and felt full. When I got home, I made tea, took out my planner, and circled the date of Clarice's nursing school orientation. I was planning to send flowers, not because I had to, because I wanted to. Later that week, Michael called. I picked up. I wasn't cold, but I wasn't the mother who rushed to smooth things over either. His voice was cautious. "You've been distant." I've been still, I said gently, and in the stillness, I saw things clearly. There was a long pause. Did I do something wrong? I smiled, not bitterly, but like someone who's finally stopped bleeding. Yes, but I'm not calling to punish you. I just stopped waiting to matter. He didn't know what to say, and that was okay. The silence didn't crush me this time. It freed me. That evening, I lit a candle on my porch. The air was cool, the kind of cool that makes you reach for a sweater and a moment of peace. The house was quiet, but no longer heavy. The napkins were folded, the dishes done. No one was coming, and I wasn't waiting. I was here, fully. And that, after everything, was enough. If you've ever been the quiet one, in the room, the one who gave everything and slowly faded from the center of the story, I see you. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you're reclaiming for you this year? I'll be reading and rooting for you, always.